Sotah Daf Beis. We begin from the beginning of the 7th parak of the Masechta, which moves away a bit from the halachas of Sotah. It starts off talking about a Sotah. It speaks about what parshias, what readings that we have to say as part of mitzvah procedures, which ones we have to say in the original Lashon Kodesh, and which ones can we say in other languages. As part of that, the Mishnah will discuss the curses and the blessings that were given at Har Gerizim and Har Eiffel. And the Gemara will get into some of the examples more in detail and explain them. So let's begin the Mishnah. It's a lengthy Mishnah. It begins by saying these are the things which you can say in any language. The Pasha of the Sotah, that is where the Kohen has to tell the Sotah about what the water is going to do and warn her, and she has to say Amen. The Pasha of Vidui Meiser, that's when you have to come once in 3 years and declare that you've given all your Meiser as you were supposed to. Kriyeshma, Shmeina Esrei, Berchas HaMazayin, the Shvua where you make a person swear that he doesn't know testimony, or you make him swear that he is not holding on to an object that was stored with him, that he was a watchman or a borrower of, or a renter. All those things have to be said in any language. It has to be understood. The following things have to be said in Lashon Kodesh specifically. That is, the Parsha of Bikurim, when you bring your Bikurim, we read a Parsha specifically. Chalitza, where the woman has certain things to say and the man has certain things to say. Again, Lashon Kodesh. Brachas and Kolis and Har Gerizim and Har Eiffel were said. Berchas Kehanim, the bracha of the Kohen Gadol after the Avodah on Yom Kippur. Hakel, that the king reads, the parsha of the Eglah Rufa that the elders read when they found somebody who died, the discussion of the Mashuach Muhammad who charges the people that if they're scared or if they have any other reason they should go home from war. All those things have to be said in Lashon Kodesh specifically. Now the Mishnah gets into them more specifically and explains them. Bikurim, so it says V'anisa v'amarta l'fnei Hashem leikacha. So V'anisa v'amarta means it has to be said in these exact words. How do you know that? Because later it says V'anu halaviyim v'amru, and over there it says the Levim will specifically say, so it's V'anu and Amru are all listed there specifically. And just like over there it's referring to Lashon Kodesh specifically, it's saying what they said. This also has to be Lashon Kodesh. What about Chalitza? And there also says V'ansa v'amra. And it's linked also to the Levim who said V'anu halavim v'amru. And there, just like it has to be Lashon Kodesh, is also Lashon Kodesh. Now, Rav Yehuda says, it says V'ansa v'amra kocha, which shows it has to be said in these exact words specifically. Now the Mishnah gets into describing the brachas and the kolos and Har Gerizim and Har Eiffel, how that worked. So it says the Klal Yisrael crossed the Yarden, they came to Har Gerizim, came to Har Eiffel, which are in Shemrain, or near Shemrain, which is near the area of Shechem, which is near Eloin Moireh. How do you know that? Because it says Halohema Be'evar Yarden, Eitzel Eloin Moireh. And there it says Vayavar Avram Be'eretz Ad Mechayim Shechem Ad Eloin Moireh. So you see Shechem, Eloin Moireh, Shemrain, all these areas are near each other. Now, what happened? So 6 of the Shvatim climbed onto the top of Har Gerizim, 6 went up to Har Eiffel. Kehanim, Levim, and the Aron stood in the valley between them. Kehanim surrounded the Aron, and the Levim surrounded the Kehanim, and all of Yisrael stood on the sides. As it says, V'chol Yisrael Zakenu v'shoytav v'shoytav aimdim mizeh l'Aron. Now, they all turned their faces towards Har Gerizim, and they began and they said the bracha. Baruch Ish Asher Lo Yasa Pesel U'Masecha. And everyone answered Amen. Then they turned their faces to Har Eiffel, and they said the same thing, but in a curse form. Ara Ish Asher Yasa Pesel U'Masecha. And everyone answered Amen. Until they finished all the brachas and the kolos that are listed in the parasha over there. Then they brought 12 stones. They built a mizbeach. They covered it with sid, with pitch or cement, and they wrote in it the entire Torah in 70 languages, like it says, Ba'er Hetev, that they wrote it out very clear. Then they took the stones, and they came, and they spent the night in that place. So that's the Mishnah. Now the Gemara begins by discussing how we know some of the things that we said here in the Mishnah. So how do you know that the Parsha of the Sotah has to be said in any language, a language that she understands? So the Gemara first wants to learn it from, it says, V'omar HaKoyin, Rashi has a girsa differently than we have here. It says, V'omar Koyin La'isha, has to be said in a way that she understands, in the whatever language it is. The Gemara quotes a brisa, that she has to understand the language, she has to understand what she is drinking and why she's drinking it, what she became tummy with, and how she became tummy. So the Bais explains further. Why is she drinking? Because of kini and stira. What is she drinking from? From a earthenware ugly kli, which represents the actions that she's accused of. What is she accused of becoming tummy with? Because of foolery and childishness. What made her tameya? So it could be any type of thing, and these are the halachos. Shagig, mezid, oinis, ratzin. The Brisa describes that we tell her all the halachos, and the reason is because we want her to know the halachos, so she shouldn't make a mistake as to whether the Sotah water worked or not. She has to know in what situations it'll work and what situations it won't work, so she shouldn't think that it should have worked and it did not. Okay, next the Gemara discusses Vidu Meiser, the declaration we make upon bringing the Meiser. So how do you know that could be in any language? The Mishnah hadn't described it. So it says, and you learn from the fact that it says V'amarta, from the V'amar that it says by the Sotah, it has to be in any language. So Rav Zvid said Abaye, but why don't you learn from the Levium? Levium it also said V'amarta. It said V'nisa V'amarta. And there it was Lashon HaKodesh. Here should also be Lashon HaKodesh. So my answer is because there it said V'nisa V'amarta. So you link V'nisa V'amarta to Anisa V'amarta, and you learn just plain Amira to just plain Amira. And this is just plain Amira. Now the Gemara quotes a Brisa. Rav Shimon ben Yochai says, a person should say his praise in a low voice and his disparagement in a loud voice. Where do you see that? So his praise in a low voice, you see, because Vidu Meiser, he says, he says, I did everything right. And there it just says V'omar. It just says it in a low voice. As far as the things which are discouraging against him, you should say it in a loud voice, because that's by Bikurim. By Bikurim it says V'nisa V'amarta, you should say it loudly. And there, he speaks about some of the things that he did wrong. Now, it says, Rav Yochanan and Rav Shimon ben Yochai, why is Shemona Esrei supposed to be said quietly? And this is a kasha. The Gemara asks, how could he say that? You should say your gnust, you should say your bad things in a loud voice. But we're going to show that it's supposed to be private. Because Rav Yochanan says, Rav Shimon ben Yochai, why did Chazal metaken that Shemona Esrei should be quiet? In order not to embarrass those people who did Averis. And they're mentioning their Averis in their Shemona Esrei. And where do we get that idea from? Because if you look, the Torah didn't specify the difference between a chatos and a carbon oila in a visible way. They both bring their carbon to the same part of the Beis Hamikdash. They both go to the north of the Mizbech and they shecht over there. In order that people shouldn't see, oh look, he's going to bring a carbon chatos, he must have done in Avera. So again, so now we have a kasha. Why is Rav Shimon ben Yochai here saying that you keep your averos to yourself, but before he said your gnus, you say out loud as part of the parsha of Bikur, Mikra Bikur. And over there, the gnus it's referring to is Arami Eved Avi and all of that. So Gemara says it's not talking really about Averos there, it's talking about his tsar. That we want to discuss the suffering that we had, which is specifically Arami Eved Avi, that Lavan tried to destroy us and all the other things that it says over there. And another situation where you show that a person should mention his tsar, his pain, out loud, when the person has tsaras, it says, tummy, yikra, he has to call out to everybody that they should all be mispal for him, and therefore he should let people know about the pain that he's in so that others should pray on his behalf. Now, the Gemara refers back to what we just said. Rav Yochanan said, Rav Shimon ben Yochai, that tefillah Shemona Esrei should be quiet in order not to embarrass those who did an Aveira. And the proof is from the fact that a chatas and oil are brought in the same part of the Beis Hamikdash, and that's in order not to embarrass the people who bring a chatas. So the Gemara asks, but there's a bunch of ways in which chatas is different that will single them out. So for example, the chatas and the oil, they don't have the blood put on the same part of the Mizbeach. The blood of the chatas goes above the red line in the middle of the mizbeach. The blood of the oil goes beneath it. So Gemara says, yeah, but at that point, it's only the kohen who knows who it is. It's the kohen who's doing that, and he anyway is going to know that it's a chatas. So that doesn't show anyone else negative information that somebody brought a carbon chatas. Gemara asks, but there's another thing. The animal that he's bringing is a female. Chatas has to be a female, and oil has to be a male animal. So the Gemara says, no, that's not a problem, because the the sheep has a thick tail, and that covers the organs that identify the gender of the animal, so nobody's going to be able to see. So Mar says that's good if he's bringing a sheep, but what if he's bringing a goat? He could also bring a goat as a chatas or as an oila. So Mar says you always have the option of bringing a sheep. If somebody chose to bring a goat, he's embarrassing himself. The goat doesn't have a tail. That's his own decision. That's up to him. He should have brought a sheep if he wanted to hide it. So the Gemara asks, but if somebody has bring a carbon chatas because he did have a desire b'shogeg, there it has to be a goat. It's the only carbon chatas that has to be a goat. So what are you going to say there? Someone says, no, there he needs a hefty kapara. He needs a lot of atonement. And therefore, we want him to get the atonement of that embarrassment. All right, now the Gemara refers to where we had said that Kriya Shema is something that is said in any language. So the Gemara asks, where do you see that? So it says Shema Yisrael. Shema Yisrael teaches me that it can be said in any language, but it should be a language that you understand. Now the Gemara quotes a brisa with two ways of understanding this. Kriya Shema, according to Rebbe, it has to be as it's written in the language of the Torah. Chachamim say it can be said in any language. What's the source of their machlekes? So Rebbe says, the Torah says v'hoyu, which means it says v'hoyu advarim ha'eleh. So that shows it should be in the way that it's written. You can't change the language. Rabbanan, it says no, it says Shema, that you should hear it. It should be something you hear and that you understand. So now the Gemara says how they each understand each other's. So according to the Rabbanan, what do they do with Vahayu? So that teaches it has to be in the order that it says. You can't change the order of the words, but it doesn't have to be the language that it's written. How does Rabbi know that halacha can't change the order? So that's because it says Devarim. It could have said Devarim Ha'ila. It says Hadvarim. Extra Hay teaches me that it has to be the words in that order. Now the Rabbanan don't hold that there is any drasha to be made from the extra Hay, and therefore they use